rain in Sector 4 did not wash the city clean. It only made the grime slicker, turning the neon reflections on the pavement into smeared, oily rainbows that looked like bruised fruit. Kai adjusted the collar of his thermal jacket, trying to keep the acidic drizzle off his neck as he leaned against the rusting railing of the delivery platform. Below him, the megacity stretched down into the smog-choked abyss, a vertical ocean of steel, glass, and desperate humanity layered 500 stories deep. Above him, piercing the heavy cloud layer like a needle through gray wool, was the orbital spire. It glittered in the harsh sunlight that the lower levels never saw, a diamond tethered to the world by gravity and money. Kai looked at the small, hovering drone buzzing near his left ear. It was a standard-issue courier bot, shaped like a flattened egg with a singular glowing blue eye. Its chassis was scratched and dented, bearing the scars of 1,000 deliveries to the worst neighborhoods in the quadrant. "You are late," the drone's synthesized voice chirped. It sounded like a suffocating harmonic, overly cheerful and completely devoid of soul. "The client has flagged this as priority alpha." "I am not late," Kai muttered, flicking a droplet of water from his eyelashes. "I am soaking up the ambiance. You cannot rush art, and you definitely cannot rush a maglev train that is running on a schedule designed by a drunkard. You are not an artist. Kai, you are a courier, and your heart rate is elevated. Are you experiencing stress?" Kai snorted, a sharp, cynical sound. "I am experiencing the joy of being the galaxy's most underpaid Cupid. Do you know what is in the bag? Boxy?" The drone bobbed in the air. "My designation is D77, not Boxy, and the manifest is encrypted." "It is a wedding gift," Kai said, tapping the heavy, magnetically sealed case secured to his hip. "It is always a wedding gift, or a peace offering, or a bribe. I ferry diamonds and treaties to parties I will never be invited to. And then I go home to a HAB unit that smells like recycled ozone and stale noodles." He looked up at the spire again. Somewhere up there, beyond the atmosphere scrubbers and the security cordons, the wedding of the century was starting. The news feeds had been screaming about it for weeks. The union of the Terran Chancellor's son and a scion of the Ethos dynasty. The headlines called it a bridge between worlds. The street chatter called it a deal with the devils. The Ethos were ancient, their biology so advanced it looked like magic. Their lifespans stretching into millennia. Humans called them vampires because the word fit the fear, even if the science was different. They were apex predators who had decided to play politics instead of hunting, at least for now. The maglev train finally hissed into the station, displacing a cloud of steam. Kai stepped aboard, the drone following faithfully at his shoulder. The car was crowded with the mid-level cast, technicians, service workers, and lower-tier bureaucrats heading up Spire for the night shift. Kai found a spot near the window and leaned his head back against the cool glass. 32 years old. That was what his file said, but his reflection in the dark glass looked older. There were lines around his eyes that did not come from smiling. They came from squinting through a scope for 3 days straight in the mud of a colony world, waiting for a target that was just a set of coordinates and a political problem. He had been a decorated sniper in Starfleet, a specialist in long-range interdiction. He had been good at it, too good. Then came the operation on Oakhaven, the civilian shields used as cover, the order to fire anyway. He had left the service with a medal he never wore and a discharge paper that called it psychological incompatibility. Now he delivered packages. It was simpler. Packages did not bleed, and they usually did not scream when you dropped them. The train surged upward, pressing Kai into the seat. Gravity dampeners whined, fighting the G-force as they ascended past the cloud layer. The smog broke, revealing the blinding clarity of the upper atmosphere. The spire grew massive in the window, a sprawling complex of white towers and suspended gardens that defied physics. Kai checked his datapad. The delivery instructions were specific and unusually strict. Deliver to the bride's security detail, in person. Biometric confirmation required. Do not leave at the front desk. Do not hand to a drone. Sounds paranoid, Kai murmured to himself. Rich people are always paranoid, the drone replied. They have more to lose. They arrived at the primary docking bay of the Sky Palace. The air here smelled different, filtered, scented with jasmine and ozone, crisp and expensive. Kai stepped onto the pristine white flooring, his boots leaving faint damp smudges that a cleaning bot immediately whisked away. He felt out of place in his worn jacket and utility trousers, surrounded by dignitaries in shimmering silk robes and formal military dress uniforms. He approached the first security checkpoint. A towering bot with a porcelain faceplate and a sleek, alabaster chassis blocked his path. It held a staff that hummed with stun charge energy. Purpose of visit, the bot stated. Its voice was smooth like polished stone. Delivery for the bridal party, Kai said, holding up his authorization chit. Priority Alpha. Check the code. The bot's ocular sensors flashed red, scanning the barcode on Kai's wrist and the magnetic signature of the package. A beam of light swept over Kai's body, lingering on the metallic port behind his ear. His military-grade neural implant, now obsolete and prone to headaches. Weapon detected, the bot said. Kinetic projectile thrower. Concealed. Left boot. Old habits, Kai said, keeping his voice level. I have a permit. Dangerous city down below. The bot paused, processing. Permit verified. Do not remove the weapon from its holster within the palace grounds. Lethal force is authorized for non-compliance. Proceed. Kai moved past the machine, letting out a breath he had not realized he was holding. He walked through a long, arched hallway where the walls were made of transparent aluminum, showing the curve of the planet below. To his right, an anti-gravity garden floated in the air. Exotic, bioluminescent orchids drifted without soil, their roots drinking from the humidified air. Waterfalls flowed upward, defying gravity, cascading into shimmering pools on the ceiling. It was beautiful. It was excessive. It made Kai's teeth ache. He passed a group of senators gossiping near a fountain. Did you hear about the bride's dowry? One of them whispered, and swirling a glass of blue wine. Technology transfers. Quantum state biocomputing? I heard her family insists on the old rites, another replied. A woman with silver skin mods. They say the ethos drink memories, that they can taste your childhood in a single drop of blood. Monsters in couture, if you ask me. Keep your voice down, the first one hissed. We need this alliance. If the rumors about the Outer Rim destabilization are true, we need their fleets. Kai kept walking, his face neutral. Old monsters in new couture. He liked that. It sounded like a line from one of the trashy noir novels he read when insomnia kept him awake. He approached the secondary checkpoint, a more chaotic junction where caterers, musicians, and staff were being funneled through scanners. His head gave a sudden, sharp throb. It was a familiar pain, the phantom ache of his neural implant acting up. But this time it was different. It was not just pain. It was a noise. A high-pitched whine that tore through his auditory cortex. Kai stumbled, grabbing a marble pillar for support. His heads-up display, usually a clean stream of green data, fractured. Static washed across his vision. For a split second, the marble hall vanished. In its place, he saw a jagged, dark landscape, burning skies, and eyes. Two glowing crimson orbs staring directly at him from the darkness. A woman's laughter, low and melodic, echoed inside his skull, not through his ears but directly into his brain. System error. His internal diagnostic scrolled in red text. External interference. Signal source unknown. Kai blinked rapidly, shaking his head. The vision snapped away. He was back in the hallway. A server carrying a tray of canapes was staring at him with concern. "Are you quite all right, sir?" the server asked. "Fine," Kai rasped, rubbing his temple. "Just a glitch. Low battery. Where is the security receiving station?" The server, looking flustered and eager to get away from the twitching courier, pointed vaguely down a corridor to the left. "Just through those double doors, past the atrium. You cannot miss it." Kai nodded and pushed off the pillar. The laughter was still echoing faintly in his memory, like a song he could not quite remember the lyrics to. He checked the package at his side. It was humming, a faint vibration that seemed to synchronize with the pounding of his heart. He followed the server's directions, or thought he did. The corridors of the Sky Palace were a labyrinth of shifting walls and holographic art installations. He took a left, then a right, looking for a service entrance or a guard station. Instead, he found a massive set of double doors made of legitimate, non-synthetic oak, carved with scenes of celestial battles. There was no guard. That should have been his first warning. Kai pushed the doors open, expecting a security office. He stepped into a supernova of light and sound. He was not in a back office. He was standing at the top of the grand staircase overlooking the main crystalline ballroom. The space was cavernous, vast enough to house a destroyer-class starship. The ceiling was a dome of pure force field, exposing the naked stars and the curve of the orbital ring. But the guests were not walking on the floor. The entire room was filled with floating gravity platforms, drifting like lily pads on an invisible pond. Hundreds of the galaxy's elite, humans in tailored synthetics, aliens in exoskeletal formal wear, diplomats, warlords, and corporate kings, glided through the air, sipping drinks that glowed in the dark. Shimmering augmented reality illusions filled the empty spaces. Dragons made of smoke, waterfalls of liquid gold, constellations that rearranged themselves into the initials of the bride and groom. Kai froze. He was a smudge of gray grease on a pristine painting. He tried to step back, to slip into the shadows before anyone noticed the courier with the scuffed boots and the military haircut. Then he saw her. She was standing on the central platform, the largest of them all, suspended in the dead center of the room. The bride. Lyris. Kai had seen beautiful women before. He had seen genetically perfected supermodels on the billboards of Sector 1. He had seen alien diplomats with scales that refracted light like gemstones. This was different. This was a physical blow to the chest. She was tall, her posture regal but tense, like a bowstring pulled to its limit. Her skin was a pale, luminous violet, glowing faintly from within as if she had swallowed a star. Her gown was not made of cloth. It was woven from living nanofibers, a shifting, rippling substance that moved of its own accord, swirling around her legs like a midnight ocean, dark blue and black with pinpricks of light that matched the stars above. But it was her eyes that pinned Kai to the spot. They were large, angled, and colored an impossible shade of deep wine, flecked with starlight. They were ancient eyes in a young face, and they were looking straight at him. Across 200 meters of crowded ballroom, through the noise of the orchestra and the chatter of 1,000 guests, her gaze locked onto his. Kai felt the breath seize in his lungs. It happened again, the sensation from the hallway, but stronger. It was not a glitch this time. It was an invasion. He felt a cold, fluid presence wash over his mind. It was like someone trailing icy fingers across the surface of his brain. She was scanning him. He knew it with a soldier's instinct. He felt her sift through his surface thoughts. She touched the exhaustion, the cynicism, the lingering smoke of the Oakhaven memories he tried to bury. She felt the package at his hip. He felt her attention snag on the box, a spike of sudden, intense curiosity mixed with dread. The package seemed to pulse in response, a heavy thrumming against Kai's leg that made his nerves jump. The groom was standing next to her. He was a handsome man, the chancellor's son, wearing a dress uniform with too many gold braids. He was saying something to her, smiling for the cameras that hovered like gnats. Lyris ignored him. She did not blink. Her connection to Kai was a taut wire, vibrating with a frequency only they could hear. The music swelled. It was a heavy orchestral piece, signaling the beginning of the ceremonial dance. The guests quieted, their platforms drifting back to create a circular arena in the air. Lyris moved. She did not turn to her groom. She did not take the chancellor's son's hand. She stepped off the edge of the central platform. For a second, Kai thought she would fall. Instead, the gravity system seemed to bend to her will. She glided down, her living dress trailing behind her like a dark comet. A collective gasp ripped through the room. Dignitaries whispered. The groom stood frozen, his smile faltering into a mask of confusion. Lyris walked across the emptiness, stepping onto the solid floor where Kai stood paralyzed near the entrance. She moved with a predator's grace, silent and fluid. The crowd parted for her, confused, terrified, awestruck. She stopped 2 feet in front of him. Up close, she was terrifying. The sheer biological power radiating off her was palpable, a static charge that made the hair on Kai's arms stand up. She smelled of ozone, crushed petals, and something metallic, like blood on cold iron. Her pupils were vertical slits that dilated as she looked at him, taking in his scar, his cheap jacket, his stunned expression. Kai's mouth was dry. He swallowed hard. "I am just the delivery guy," he managed to stammer. His voice sounded pathetic in the silence of the massive hall. "I think I took a wrong turn at the atrium." Lyris tilted her head slightly. A small, sharp smile touched her lips. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a wolf finding an open door. She reached out. Her hand was slender, the fingers long and tipped with nails that looked like polished obsidian. "Dance with me," she whispered. The words bypassed his ears and resonated in his chest. It was the same voice from his vision. The laugh was gone, replaced by a command that felt less like a request and more like gravity taking hold. Kai's mind reeled. The title of a bad comedy routine flashed through his brain. I was dropping off a package at a wedding and the vampire princess took my hand. "I do not dance," Kai said, his voice tight. "And your groom looks like he is about to order an airstrike on my position. Dance. With me." She did not ask this time. She stepped forward and took his hand. Her skin was cool, smoother than silk, but harder than steel underneath. As soon as skin touched skin, the connection between them flared white-hot. Kai gasped. He saw a flash of images that were not his own. A cold stone room, a crown made of wires, a feeling of suffocating entrapment. She pulled him. He stumbled, his boots scuffing on the polished floor, but she was impossibly strong. She guided him out onto the floor, pulling him toward one of the smaller gravity discs that floated near the edge of the glorious abyss. The music shifted, the AI conductor adapting to the bizarre disruption. It became slower, more haunting. Kai found himself moving. He remembered the basics of formal movement. Officer training school had insisted on social graces, even for snipers. but he was stiff, awkward. Lyris was not. She moved like smoke. She placed her other hand on his shoulder, her fingers resting dangerously close to his neck. "Why are you doing this?" Kai hissed, looking over her shoulder at the sea of shocked faces. The security bots were tracking them. He could see their optical sensors rotating, locking onto him. "You are carrying something that does not belong here," Lyris said. Her voice was low, a velvet murmur against the rising strings of the orchestra. "It is a gift," Kai said. "From a well-wisher. I am just the courier." She spun him, a slow, languid rotation that made the room blur. "No," she said. "It is not a gift. It is a leash. I can feel it singing to my blood. Who gave it to you?" "I do not know. It was a blind drop. Anonymous client. Standard encryption." Kai was trying to keep his distance, but she pressed closer. He could feel the cold radiating from her, seeping into his chest. "Why do you care?" "It is for your security detail." "Because," Lyris murmured, leaning in until her forehead almost brushed his chin, "if that box reaches the security detail, I will never leave this rock." Kai looked down at her. He saw the tremor in her hands, the way her fingers dug into his jacket, wrinkling the synthetic fabric. It was not aggression. It was desperation. She was terrified. "You are shaking," he stated. "And you are terrified," she countered, her eyes searching his. "I can taste your adrenaline. It is sour. You want to run. I always want to run when I am surrounded by people who can buy my planet," Kai said. "The package," Lyris pressed, ignoring his deflection. "Is it active?" "I do not know what that means. It is magnetically sealed." Lyris guided them through a complex turn. The groom was shouting something now, gesturing at the guards. The drone, D-77, was hovering frantically near the ceiling, confused by its master's sudden social elevation. Kai felt a strange sensation in his chest. The proximity to her was intoxicating. It was biological, he realized. Pheromones, or something psychic. She was drawing him in, blurring his judgment. He fought it, clamping down with the mental discipline he had learned in the sniper nest. "Focus," he told himself. "Assess the threat." "The threat is the beautiful woman holding your hand," his mind answered. "What is in the box, Princess?" Kai asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "My end," she said simply. "And yours, if you stay here." The music reached a crescendo. The applause that followed was scattered, confused, polite only out of habit. The dance was ending. Kai looked toward the entrance. A security drone, larger than the others, a combat model, painted in the royal colors, descended from the ceiling. Its central eye flashed from yellow to a hard, unblinking red. "Unauthorized biologic detected." The drone's voice boomed over the crowd, silencing the murmurs. "Threat level, orange, detain and sanitize." Kai's muscles locked. He knew that tone. Sanitize meant incinerate. "Run," Kai said, instinctively reaching for the pistol in his boot, then remembering he could not draw it. Lyris did not flinch. She tightened her grip on his hand, her nails digging in sharp enough to sting. "Do not draw your weapon," she whispered, her lips brushing his ear. The sensation sent a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with fear. "If you fight, you die." "What is the alternative?" Kai asked, watching the security team mobilize at the far doors. Lyris pulled back, looking at him with those wine-dark eyes. The predatory charm was gone, replaced by a fierce, wild intensity. "Follow me," she said, "if you want to live." She did not wait for an answer. She yanked him hard, pulling him off the floating platform just as it aligned with a service alcove hidden behind a tapestry of shimmering light. Kai stumbled after her, his hand clasped in hers, the mysterious package banging against his hip. Behind them, the ballroom erupted into chaos. The groom was screaming orders. The combat drone powered up its repulsors with a high-pitched whine. Kai cast one last look back at the opulence, the floating flowers, and the frozen, horrified faces of the galaxy's elite. Then he plunged into the darkness of the service corridor, hand in hand with a monster in a dress made of living stars. Well, Kai thought, his breath coming in short. Sharp gasps as he sprinted into the dark. At least I didn't have to wait for a tip. The heavy service door sealed with a pneumatic hiss that sounded like a dying breath, cutting off the orchestral swell of the ballroom instantly. One moment, Kai was standing in a cathedral of light and sound. The next, he was plunging into the industrial guts of the Sky Palace. The transition was so abrupt it felt like waking up from a fever dream into a cold sweat. Lyris did not let go of his hand. If anything, her grip tightened, her fingers feeling less like human flesh and more like carbon steel vices wrapped in silk. She dragged him forward, not running, but moving with a terrifying, fluid velocity that forced Kai to scramble just to keep his feet. "We are going down," she said, her voice tight. "Down!" Kai gasped, stumbling as the floor beneath them shuddered. The gravity plating here was not the smooth, frictionless magic of the ballroom. It flickered and pulsed, making his stomach lurch into his throat every few steps. One second he weighed 200 pounds. The next he felt light enough to float away, only to be slammed back down by the artificial magnetics. Down where? The garbage chute? "Maintenance sublevels," Lyris replied, not looking back. Her gown, that living tapestry of midnight nanofibers, seemed to agitate in the gloom. The bioluminescence dimmed, shifting from a starry display to a dull, matte slate, camouflaging her against the grimy walls. The corridor was a sensory assault. Unlike the pristine white curves of the upper palace, this hallway was a claustrophobic tunnel of exposed pipes and unfinished alloy. The air smelled of ozone, burnt lubricant, and the stale, recycled breath of the station's ventilation systems. The walls were layered with flickering augmented reality graffiti, ghost tags left by disgruntled workers and tech anarchists. Neon skulls flashed and vanished in the corner of Kai's eye. Slogans like "Eat the Rich" and "Gravity is a Lie" hovered in jagged, glitching script over the humming machinery, visible only because Kai's own HUD was still struggling to synchronize with the lower-tier protocols. Kai yanked his arm, trying to break her grip, but it was like trying to pull away from a hydraulic press. "Hey!" he shouted, planting his heels and skidding across the metal grating. "Slow down. You are going to dislocate my shoulder, and I need that arm to sign for deliveries." Lyris spun around, the movement so fast it left an afterimage in the dim light. She did not slow down. She slammed into him. Kai hit the wall hard. The impact knocked the wind out of him, rattling his teeth. Before he could even think about reaching for the concealed kinetic thrower in his boot or the pulse knife strapped to his thigh, Lyris was there. She pinned him, her body pressing him into the cold metal, her forearm locking his right wrist high above his head. He froze. They were inches apart. The space between them was charged with a sudden, suffocating intimacy. He could feel the heat radiating from her skin, a stark contrast to the icy demeanor she had worn in the ballroom. Her chest heaved against his, the nanofiber dress slick and strange against his worn courier jacket. "Do not," she hissed, her voice vibrating in his chest. "Do not reach for your weapon. Do not try to access your comms. Do not move." Kai stared at her, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. This was not the trembling, fearful bride from the dance floor. This was something else. This was the predator the news feeds warned about. "I was just going to scratch my nose," Kai said, his voice straining for a nonchalance he did not feel. You are making a habit of manhandling the help. Princess, is this an ethos courtship ritual? Because if so, you are moving a little fast for a first date. Lyris did not smile. She did not blink. Her eyes, those impossible pools of wine and starlight, began to change. The iris expanded, swallowing the white, glowing with a deep, crimson luminescence that cut through the shadows of the corridor. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time, Kai saw them clearly. The sharp, elongated canines, crystalline and terrifyingly beautiful, descending from her upper gum line. She was hungry. He could feel it. It was not just a visual cue, it was a psychic pressure, a heavy static weight in the air that tasted of copper and instinct. Her gaze dropped to the pulse point in his neck, watching the rapid beat of the artery there. Her nostrils flared, inhaling his scent, sweat, fear, and the metallic tang of old adrenaline. Kai's soldier training screamed at him to fight, to twist his hips, drive a knee into her stomach, and go for the knife. But he stayed still. He recognized the look in her eyes. He had seen it in soldiers who had been on the line too long, the look of someone holding back a tidal wave with a screen door. Lyris squeezed his wrist, painful and tight, trembling with the effort of restraint. She was fighting herself. The vampire instinct wanted to tear his throat out, to end the threat and feed on the chaos. The woman inside was screaming for control. I am not kidnapping you, Kai, she said, her voice dropping to a guttural growl that raised the hair on his arms. I am saving your life, and mine. You have a funny way of showing it, Kai whispered, daring to meet her glowing gaze. You look like you are about to order me off the menu. Lyris closed her eyes. She took a deep, shuddering breath, turning her face away from his neck. The glow in her eyes faded, dialing back from predatory red to that deep, bruised purple. She released his wrist slowly, stepping back but keeping herself positioned between him and the door, blocking his escape. I am sorry, she said, the words stiff, as if she was unaccustomed to apologies. The adrenaline, the proximity, my biology is reactive. It responds to threat states with aggression. And hunger? Kai asked, rubbing his wrist where her fingers had left white indentations. And hunger, she admitted, looking at the floor. Kai adjusted his jacket, checking to make sure the package was still secured to his hip. It was... The heavy magnetic case felt like a lead weight. Okay, Kai said, exhaling a long breath. So, you are not going to eat me. That is a solid start. Now, do you want to tell me why you dragged me into a service tunnel that smells like a burning engine? Or should I just guess? Lyris looked up, her expression hardening. She pointed a long, elegant finger at the package on his hip. That, she said. The box? Kai looked down at it. It is a wedding gift. From what I gathered, probably a set of antique candlesticks or a very expensive blender. Do not be stupid, Lyris snapped, the regal authority bleeding back into her tone. You are a courier, but you are not an idiot. You felt it on the dance floor. I felt you scanning my brain, Kai countered, which, for the record, is a violation of about 6 different privacy laws in this sector. I did not just scan you, Lyris said, stepping closer again, though this time she kept her hands clasped in front of her. I scanned the package. It has a signature, a quantum blood resonance. Kai frowned. That sounds like sci-fi nonsense. It is ethos technology, she said. Old technology. Forbidden technology. It sings to my biology. It creates a harmonic frequency that bypasses the blood-brain barrier. It is designed to be irresistible to my kind. Kai looked at the box with new suspicion. He had carried illegal goods before, stolen data cores, contraband combat stims. But this felt different. The box was just a matte black cube, unassuming, standard shipment grade. But now that she mentioned it, he could feel a faint vibration coming from it, like a cat purring against his leg. "So, what is inside?" Kai asked. "A bomb." "Worse," Lyra said. "Open it." "Absolutely not," Kai said, crossing his arms. "My job is to deliver. If I break the seal, I void my contract. I lose my rating. I do not get paid. And in this economy, that is a death sentence." Lyris let out a sharp, frustrated sound that was half laugh, half snarl. "You are worried about your rating? If that box had reached the security detail, you would be dead within the hour. No witnesses, open it." She reached into the folds of her living dress and pulled out a small device. It looked like a silver seed, smooth and featureless. She tossed it into the air between them. The seed hovered, spinning rapidly, and then bloomed like a metallic flower, unfolding petals of light. A holographic interface projected into the grim hallway, cutting through the flickering graffiti. It was a complex weave of spectral diagrams, genetic helixes, and mathematical sigils that Kai did not recognize. "Allow me," Lyris said. She manipulated the light with her fingers, pulling up a scan of the box at Kai's hip. The hologram showed the internal structure of the package, inside the heavy lead lining and the magnetic seals. There was an object. It looked like a coronet, a delicate circlet of filigree metal. But as Kai looked closer, the hologram zoomed in. The metal was not solid. It was made of millions of microscopic needles, woven together like thorns. "The crown of compliance," Lyris whispered, the color draining from her already pale face. "The crown of what?" Kai asked, leaning in. "Compliance," she repeated, her voice trembling. "It is a legend, a myth from the dark ages of my people's history. Before we formed the Assembly, before the treaties, it is a neural bio-interface." She pointed to the thorny interior of the crown on the hologram. "These needles," she explained, tracing the air. "They are not just metal. They are injectors. They lock into the nervous system of an ethos royal. They bind to the spine and the cerebral cortex. Once attached, it cannot be removed without killing the host." "And what does it do?" Kai asked, a cold knot forming in his stomach. "It overrides the will," Lyris said, her eyes fixed on the ghostly image. "It turns the wearer into a vessel, a puppet. Whoever holds the command key controls the wearer's motor functions, their speech, even their surface thoughts. It was used to enslave rival dynasties, to force marriages, to end wars by stripping the leaders of their souls." She looked at Kai, horror stark on her face. I thought this was just a political marriage," she whispered, "a transaction. My mother sells my bloodline for a trade route. The humans get an alliance. I expected to be unhappy. I expected to be bored. I did not expect to be a slave." Kai looked from her face to the unassuming box on his hip. He felt a sudden wave of nausea. He had been carrying a slavery device. He had been joking with his drone about underpaid Cupid duties while hauling a psychic shackle to a wedding. "Well," Kai said, the silence stretching too thin. "As wedding gifts go, that definitely beats a toaster. But I have to say, it is the worst gift I have ever delivered. And once I delivered a box of angry venom rats to a birthday party." Lyris stared at him for a second, blinked, and then let out a sound that was remarkably unroyal. She snorted. It was a wet, ungraceful sound of suppressed laughter breaking through terror. "Venom rats?" she asked, her voice shaking but lighter. "6 of them," Kai nodded, grateful for the shift in tension. The client had a weird sense of humor. Lyris shook her head, a small, genuine smile touching her lips. You are absurd, courier. The moment of levity shattered as a metallic clang echoed down the corridor from the direction they had come. Then came the heavy, rhythmic thud of magnetic boots. Security, Kai hissed, his humor vanishing instantly. Standard patrols do not come down here, Lyris said, her eyes widening. They are sweeping the grid. They know I am off the planned route, Kai said. My drone probably pinged the network before it got confused. We need to move. Where? Lyris looked around the cramped hallway. There were no side doors, just the long tunnel back to the ballroom or the dead end ahead. There. Kai pointed to a heavy grate in the floor, marked with a warning symbol. Mag rail maintenance. High voltage. That is a service shaft, Lyris said, wrinkling her nose. It leads to the ventilation cyclers. It will be filthy. It will be empty, Kai corrected. Help me with the latch. He dropped to his knees, jamming his fingers into the release mechanism. It was rusted shut. Lyris dropped beside him. With her enhanced strength, she did not just turn the latch, she sheared the locking bolt clean off. She ripped the heavy grate up as if it were made of cardboard. A rush of cold, rushing air blasted them from the darkness below. Ladies first, Kai suggested. Lyris grabbed his jacket collar. Together, she said. She pulled him over the edge. They did not fall so much as slide. The shaft was a steep, 45-degree angle, slick with oil and condensation. They tumbled into the darkness, bouncing off the curved metal walls. Kai tried to brake with his boots, but the momentum was too great. He felt Lyris's arm wrapped around his waist, her dress whipping around them like a shroud. They slid for what felt like miles, the wind roaring in their ears, before the shaft leveled out abruptly. They shot out of the end of the tube and landed in a heap on a pile of something soft. Synthetic insulation foam, Kai realized, in a dark, cavernous space. Kai groaned, rolling onto his back. His HUD was strobing red warnings, minor contusions, left knee integrity at 90%. You are heavy for a hallucination, he muttered. Lyris was on top of him. They were a tangle of limbs and disheveled finery. Her hair had come loose from its intricate ceremonial braid, falling around them like a curtain of white gold filaments. The room was pitch black, save for the faint bioluminescent glow of Lyris's skin and the dying flicker of Kai's implant light. Are you injured? Lyris asked. Her voice was breathless, but not from exertion. I will live, Kai said. He tried to sit up, but she did not move. Her face was inches from his again. But this time, it was different. In the hallway, the intimacy had been aggressive, threatening. Here, in the dark, stripped of the palace's grandeur, it was raw. Kai felt the strange pull of her presence again. It was like standing next to a high-voltage transformer. The air hummed. He realized with a start that he could feel her emotions bleeding into him. Not thoughts, but jagged spikes of feeling. Fear, confusion, and underneath it all, a deep, gnawing hunger. Lyris went rigid. She was straddling his waist, her hands pressed against his chest to push herself up. But she froze. She could feel the heavy, thumping rhythm of his heart beneath her palms. She could sense the warmth of the blood rushing through the veins in his chest, oxygenated and rich. The slide had scraped Kai's cheek. A tiny bead of blood welled up on his skin. To Lyris, the scent was overwhelming. It hit her like a physical blow, sweet and iron-rich, cutting through the damp smell of the maintenance shaft. Her pupils blew wide, swallowing the iris entirely. Her mouth watered. The beast inside her, the ancient biological imperative that the crown sought to enslave, roared for sustenance. She leaned down. She could not help it. Her face moved toward his neck, drawn by the heat, by the pulse. Kai stopped breathing. He did not reach for his knife. He watched her, his eyes adjusting to the gloom. He saw the conflict. He saw the way her lips trembled, pulling back to bare those needle-sharp fangs. He saw a tear, luminous and silver, leak from the corner of her eye. She was not a monster hunting prey. She was an addict fighting a fix. "Lyris," he whispered. The sound of her name snapped the trance. She recoiled as if he had burned her. She scrambled backward, crab-walking away from him until she hit the far wall of the chamber. She curled into herself, pulling her knees to her chest, burying her face in her hands. "I am sorry," she gasped, her voice muffled and thick with shame. "I am sorry. I am sorry." Kai sat up slowly, wiping the blood from his cheek with the back of his hand. He looked at the smear of red on his glove, then at the huddle of glowing misery in the corner. He could have run. He should have run. He had the door codes in his head. He knew how to navigate ventilation shafts. He could leave her here, deliver the package to an incinerator, and disappear into the lower city. But he remembered Oakhaven. He remembered the general who had given the order to fire. The man had worn a pristine uniform, spoken with perfect diction, and smiled for the cameras while burning a city to the ground. That was a monster, Kai thought. This is just a girl with bad genetics and a worse family. He stood up, his knees cracking, and walked over to her. He did not touch her. He just sat down on the floor a few feet away, leaning his back against the cold metal wall. "Hey," he said softly. Lyris did not look up. "Go away, courier. I am dangerous." "You saw." "I have seen dangerous," Kai said, resting his arms on his knees. "I was a sniper in the 6th Fleet. I served under Admiral Krell. You know him?" Lyris nodded vaguely against her knees. "The Butcher of the Rim." "Yeah. Nice guy. Weighed about 180. Human. No fangs. He ordered me to shoot a shuttle full of refugees because he thought there might be a rebel leader on board. When I hesitated, he put a pistol to my head." Kai looked at the ceiling, lost in the memory. "I have seen monsters, Princess. They usually wear medals and expensive uniforms. They do not apologize for almost biting you. They just wipe the blood off and go to dinner." Lyris slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were still dark, but the red glow had faded, leaving them a deep, sorrowful violet. "You did not shoot?" she asked. "I missed." Kai lied. It was a lie he had told himself for 10 years. "I missed on purpose. Then I quit." He looked at her. "You held back. That counts." Lyris uncurled slightly, wiping her face. "It counts for little if I end up wearing that crown. If they put it on me, I will not be able to hold back anything. I will be a weapon that can walk through walls and influence minds." "Then we leave," Kai said, standing up and offering her a hand. "We find an exit. I get you to a transport. You disappear." "I cannot just disappear," Lyris said, ignoring his hand and standing up on her own. Her voice gained a sudden sharp edge. "If I run, they will find me. Or they will just grab my cousin or my sister. The crown fits any ethos bloodline." "So what? You want to stay?" "No," Lyris said. "I want to stop them." She began to pace the small chamber, her dress swirling around her ankles. "It is not just my mother," she said, the pieces falling into place in her mind. "My father, he has been meeting with the Human Coalition. There were rumors of a new security initiative, an alliance with the rogue AI syndicates." "The AIs?" Kai asked, frowning. "I thought they were quarantined in the dark sector." "They were," Lyris said. "But my father believes that biological leadership is flawed. He thinks emotional volatility causes war. He wants the perfect order of the machine combined with the biological power of the ethos. She stopped pacing and looked at Kai. They have been whispering to him, promising him order. This wedding, the crown, it is the final key. If they control me, they control the ethos assembly. If they control the assembly, they have the fleet, and with the AI algorithms predicting every move. Total control, Kai finished. A police state that spans the galaxy. Exactly. A soft whirring sound interrupted them. It came from the shaft they had just exited. Kai's head snapped up. A faint blue light was descending the tunnel. Drone, he whispered. It was a micro-drone, a spider-like seeker unit no bigger than a man's hand. It buzzed into the room, its multifaceted eyes scanning the darkness. It spotted them immediately. Target acquired. It chirped. It did not have weapons, but it had a transmitter. Kai did not think. He moved. He dropped his shoulder and lunged forward. The drone tried to bank away, its rotors whining, but Kai was faster. He reached down to his thigh, and with a motion too fluid to track, he drew the pulse knife strapped there. The blade hummed with a violet energy edge. Kai slashed upward in a clean, brutal arc. The knife sliced through the drone's casing like it was paper. The machine sparked, split in two, and clattered to the floor, dead before it hit the ground. Kai stood over the wreckage, breathing steadily, the knife held in a reverse grip. He flipped the blade and sheathed it in one smooth motion. Lyra stared at him. She had seen him as a courier, a delivery boy with a sarcastic mouth. Now she saw the soldier. The efficiency of the kill was chilling. "You are full of surprises, Kai," she said softly. "Occupational hazard," he muttered, kicking the drone debris into a corner. "That was a scout. The big boys will be behind it. We have maybe 5 minutes before a hunter-killer squad drops down that tube." He looked at the package, which was still miraculously attached to his belt. "We need to get rid of this," Kai said. "We can smash it, meld it into slag with a plasma torch. If there is no crown, there is no plan." "No," Lyra said, stepping forward. "If we destroy it, they will just build another. It might take months, but they will do it. And in the meantime, they will spin this. They will say I was kidnapped by a human terrorist. They will use it to start a war to justify the crackdown." "Then what do we do?" Kai asked, frustration leaking into his voice. "We cannot keep it. We cannot destroy it. We use it," Lyra said. Her eyes were hard now. "Diamond bright. We need the key." "The key? The crown is useless without the command key," she explained. "The trigger object. If we can get the key, we can prove what it is. We can access the logs inside the crown's BIOS drive. We can broadcast the truth to the entire wedding." Kai stared at her. "You want to go back up there, into the shark tank?" "We have to," Lyra said. "It is the only way to be free." She pointed at the box. "Open it. I need to see it. I need to know exactly what version they built." Kai hesitated, then nodded. He unclipped the case from his belt and set it on top of a crate. He keyed in the override code, standard courier backdoor, and the magnetic seals hissed. The lid popped open. Inside, resting on a bed of dark velvet, was the crown. It was hideous and beautiful. It looked like liquid mercury caught in a freeze frame. The metal seemed to writhe slightly, reacting to the presence of Lyris's blood in the room. The thorns on the inside were not static. They twitched, seeking purchase, like the legs of 1,000 silver insects. Lyris gasped, her hand going to her mouth. She swayed, nearly fainting at the visceral horror of the thing designed to eat her mind. Kai reached out to steady her, his hand gripping her elbow. "Easy," he said. It is in the box. It cannot hurt you. Lyris took a breath, forcing herself to look at it, to understand it. The key, she whispered, pointing to a small indentation in the center of the design. It is a remote link. The key will be close to the groom. He has to be the one to activate it. It is probably on his person. A ring, a pendant, a cufflink, Kai guessed, remembering the groom's flashy jewelry. We have to steal it, Lyris said. We have to crash the ceremony, steal the key, and upload the proof before they put this thing on my head. That is a suicide mission, Kai said flatly. Lyris turned to him. She extended her hand again. The gesture mirrored the one in the ballroom, but the context had shifted entirely. There was no performance now, no crowd, just two people in a dark, dirty room with a box of monsters between them. I cannot do it alone, she said. I need your eyes, your soldier skills, your stubbornness. Kai looked at her hand. He looked at the crown. He thought about his empty apartment, his drone, the endless gray rain of the city. He thought about the check he would never cash. Then he looked at Lyris. She was terrified, hunted, and out of options, but she was standing tall. Kai let out a short, resigned sigh. I am going to regret this, he said. I am definitely going to lose my delivery license. He reached out and took her hand. This time, he was ready for the shock, but it still surprised him. As his skin touched hers, a jolt of static electricity snapped between them. He felt a warmth travel up his arm, settling in his chest. It was not just heat, it was a sensation of connection. He could feel the edges of her determination, the steel core beneath the fear. It was the beginning of a blood bond, the alien biology recognizing an ally. Partners? Kai asked, squeezing her hand. Lyris squeezed back, her grip strong and sure. Partners, she said. Now! Let's go ruin a wedding. The air in the maintenance shaft was stagnant, heavy with the smell of recycled ozone and the faint copper tang of Lyris's distress. They needed to move, and they needed to blend in. The ballroom was a galaxy away, and the corridors between here and the command levels were swarming with security algorithms that were rapidly upgrading their threat parameters. Lyris stood in the center of the cramped utility room, her breathing steadying as she regained the icy composure of a royal. She looked down at her gown, the midnight blue masterpiece woven from living nanofibers that had dazzled the wedding guests only 20 minutes ago. This is too conspicuous, she stated, her voice echoing slightly off the metal walls. I look like a target wrapped in starlight. Kai leaned against a crate of hydraulic fluid, catching his breath. He looked her up and down, trying not to stare at the way the bioluminescence of her skin pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. You look like a princess, he said, which is currently a problem. Unless you have a change of clothes hidden in that nanotech, we are going to have a hard time walking past the guards. Lyris closed her eyes. Watch, she commanded softly. She placed her hands on her hips, her fingers pressing into the fabric. A ripple passed through the gown, like a stone dropped into a dark pond. The nanofibers responded to her bioelectric signature. The midnight blue began to bleed away, replaced by a severe slate-gray matte finish. The voluminous floating skirts retracted, the fibers knitting themselves tighter, shrinking and reshaping. In seconds, the breathtaking ball gown had reconfigured itself into a sleek, functional tunic and trousers, identical to the uniforms worn by the high-level palace attendants. Even the shimmering light of her skin seemed to dim, dampened by a mental suppression technique that left her looking almost ordinary, if still hauntingly beautiful. Kai let out a low whistle. Remind me to ask where you shop if we survive this. That is handy. It is standard Imperial protocol, Lyris replied, smoothing the new gray fabric over her flank. Survival requires adaptability. Now, you need to look less like a courier who crawled through a ventilation shaft and more like someone who belongs here. Kai looked down at his scuffed boots and jacket, stained with grease from the slide. I think I might be out of luck on the nano-suit front. He scanned the room. In the corner, slumped in a folding chair with a hat pulled over his eyes, was a catering staff member. The man was snoring softly, taking an unauthorized break in the quietest spot he could find. A pristine white service jacket and formal trousers hung on a hook above him, wrapped in plastic. Kai grinned. Apologies to the working class, he whispered. 10 minutes later, Kai was wrestling with the magnetic clasps of the stolen catering uniform. The jacket was a size too small across the shoulders, and the high collar was stiff with starch and embedded sensor threads. Who designed this? Kai muttered, tugging at a fastener that refused to click. It feels like wearing a plastic bag that hates you. Stop fidgeting, Lyris hissed. She reached out, her cool fingers brushing his neck as she snapped the collar into place with a decisive click. You look adequate. Keep your head down, walk with purpose, and let me handle the biometric locks. They exited the maintenance room, stepping into the labyrinth of service corridors that ran like arteries behind the palace's opulent skin. The transition was jarring. The guest areas were open, airy, and filled with golden light. The service levels were cramped, lit by harsh fluorescent strips, and smelling of industrial cleaners. Using Lyris's royal override codes, punched into keypads with rapid-fire precision, and Kai's soldier-grade situational awareness, they moved deeper into the station. Kai took point, his eyes scanning for camera blind spots and patrol loops. He moved differently now. The slouch of the cynical courier was gone, replaced by the fluid, predatory grace of a sniper moving through hostile territory. Hold, Kai whispered, pressing his back against a bulkhead. He held up a hand. Drone swarm ahead. They ducked into a laundry alcove as a cluster of security drones buzzed past, their optical sensors sweeping the hallway with red laser grids. The hum of their repulsors faded around the corner. Clear, Kai said, signaling her forward. They navigated through a series of AR-masked doors that looked like solid walls to the naked eye but shimmered into transparency when Lyris approached. As they climbed higher, nearing the support levels for the main banquet halls, the environment changed again. They entered a wide, low-ceilinged hall that served as a break area and logistics hub for the palace's non-human staff. Kai froze. He had expected droids or perhaps human indentured workers. Instead, the room was filled with vampires. They were Lyris's people, the ethos, but they looked nothing like the glittering nobility in the ballroom. These were commoners. Their skin was paler, lacking the vibrant star-like glow of the royals. They wore gray jumpsuits and moved with a weary heaviness, carrying crates of exotic fruit and checking data pads. There were no fangs bared here, no predatory posturing, just exhaustion. Kai looked at Lyris. She had stopped dead, her eyes wide. I did not know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I did not know there were so many of us here. You thought the palace ran on magic? Kai asked quietly. I thought. Lyris faltered. I was told the staff were automated, or paid contractors from the guilds. These are my subjects. A group of workers near a water recycler noticed them. They stiffened, sensing Lyris's blood status despite her disguise. A young girl, no older than 20 in human years, with eyes that held a faint, dying ember of violet, stepped forward. She held a tray of crystal glasses. My lady? The girl asked, her voice trembling. She looked at Lyrus's disguised outfit, confused by the clash between the uniform and the royal aura Lyrus could not fully hide. Lyrus stepped forward, ignoring Kai's warning hand. "I am just passing through," she said, her voice soft. "What is your name?" "Ilara," the girl said, dipping into a clumsy curtsy that nearly upended her tray. "Ilara," Lyrus repeated. "Why are you here? Why are you not on the homeworld?" The girl looked down at her boots. "The homeworld is crowded, my lady, and the tithes. My family could not pay the energy tax. The recruiters said the palace paid in soul credits and blood rations. They said it was an honor to serve the wedding." Lyrus looked around the room. Dozens of eyes were on her now, eyes that held a mixture of reverence and resentment. "Is it?" Lyrus asked. "Is it an honor?" Ilara laughed, a short, bitter sound that shocked Kai with its cynicism. It sounded too much like his own. "An honor? We scrub the floors you walk on. We prep the food you do not eat. I used to dream that I would earn enough to buy a ticket to the outer colonies. I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to marry a mechanic I knew in the shipyards." "What happened to him?" Kai asked gently. Ilara shrugged. "We do not marry for love, sir. Not the lowborn. And apparently not the highborn either, if the news feeds are true. We marry where we are told, to keep the bloodline stable. Power is the only thing that matters to the assembly." The words hit Lyrus like a physical slap. She recoiled slightly, her hand going to her throat. Ilara looked up, realizing she might have spoken too freely. "Forgive me. I am tired. The shift has been 18 hours. Lyrus reached out and touched the girl's shoulder. There was no electric shock this time, just a human moment of connection. "You should have been a pilot." "Ilara," Lyrus said fiercely. "You should have chosen—" Lyrus turned away abruptly, her face a mask of pain, and marched toward the far exit. Kai gave the girl a nod, a silent acknowledgement of one grunt to another, and followed the princess. They pushed through a service airlock and emerged onto a maintenance balcony. The heavy door sealed behind them, cutting off the noise of the logistics hub. Suddenly, there was silence. They were outside the pressurized hull, shielded by an atmospheric force field. Below them, the megacity spread out like a circuit board of jewels. Millions of lights flickering in the smog. Above, the unfiltered stars burned with a cold, hard clarity. Lyrus gripped the railing, her knuckles white. She was trembling. "I did not know," she said again. Her voice broke. "I sat in the spire, eating meals prepared by hands I never saw, wearing clothes stitched by people who cannot afford to heat their homes. And I thought I was the one suffering because I had to attend boring banquets." Kai moved beside her, leaning his elbows on the rail. He looked down at the city, at the sector where his tiny, overpriced apartment was located. "It is designed that way," Kai said. "The walls are not just to keep the atmosphere in. They are to keep the reality out. If you saw them, you might ask questions, and people asking questions are bad for business." "I am a parasite," Lyrus whispered. "No," Kai said firmly. He turned to face her. "You are sheltered. There is a difference. A parasite takes and does not care. You care. I saw your face back there." Lyrus looked up at him. The starlight washed over her face, turning her skin into cool marble. The disguise seemed to fade in this light, the royalty bleeding through not in dress, but in presence. "I watched my father sign treaties," she said, her voice hollow. "I stood right next to him. Papers that traded mining rights for colony worlds. I thought it was diplomacy. I thought we were keeping the peace. But we were just selling people, like cattle. Kai looked at her, seeing the guilt eating at her. He recognized it. It was the same acid that sat in his own gut. "I was a sniper," Kai said. The words came out before he could stop them. "Oak Haven. That is the name on my file. The politicians told us it was an insurgent stronghold. They said the civilians had been evacuated." He paused, looking at his hands that had held a rifle steady for 3 days. "I took the shot," Kai said. "I took the shot, and then I watched the thermal bloom. And when the smoke cleared, it wasn't a stronghold, it was a school. They used me to clean up a political mess, and then they called me collateral damage when I tried to speak up." Lyris turned to him fully. Her eyes searched his face, reading the lines of trauma that he usually hid behind sarcasm. "We are the same," she murmured. "Pieces on a board we cannot see." Kai looked at her, really looked at her. In the harsh, artificial world of the station, she was a terrifying alien variable. But here, under the stars, she was just someone who was hurt. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a second before brushing a stray strand of silver hair from her face. Her skin was cool to the touch, but she leaned into his hand, seeking the warmth. "We do not have to be pieces," Kai said, his voice rough. "We can flip the board." The air between them grew thick, charged with something that was not just the alien blood bond. It was magnetic. Lyris looked at his lips, then up to his eyes. Her pupils dilated, not with hunger this time, but with a different kind of desire. The fear of her power, the fear that she could break him, warred with a desperate need to be held, to be seen not as a princess or a monster, but as Lyris. Kai felt his heart hammering against his ribs. This was dangerous. She was royalty. She was a predator. And she was engaged to a man who could have Kai executed with a phone call. But the pull was undeniable. He wanted to kiss her. He wanted to bridge the gap between their species and burn down the political nonsense that kept them apart. Lyris leaned closer, her breath, cool and scented like night-blooming flowers, mingled with his. "Kai," she whispered. He started to lean in, the rest of the galaxy fading away. Chime. The sound was sharp and piercing. A proximity alarm blared from the console near the door. Red lights began to flash along the railing. Section sweep initiating. A robotic voice announced, "Clearance code required." The moment shattered. Kai pulled back, cursing under his breath. Lyris straightened, the mask of the princess slamming back into place, though her eyes remained wide and breathless. "We have to go," Kai said, checking his HUD. "Security patrol is 2 sectors over and closing. The command level is up that lift." They moved. The silence between them now filled with unspoken words and the ghost of a touch that hadn't quite happened. They infiltrated the upper administrative deck, moving through the shadows like ghosts. This was the nerve center of the palace, a place of silent carpet, mahogany walls, and hushed conversations. The data vault was guarded not by soldiers but by a high-end AI butler unit standing before a massive set of obsidian doors. The android was sleek, gold-plated, and looked distinctively bored. "Leave this to me," Kai whispered. He adjusted his stolen catering jacket and strode around the corner, feigning a breathless panic. "You there, unit!" Kai shouted, waving a datapad he had swiped from the logistics hub. The AI butler turned, its optical sensors narrowing. "This is a restricted area. Identify yourself. Logistics Sub-Coordinator Miller." Kai lied smoothly. "Look, I have a crisis. The bride's aunt, the one with the tentacles, she ordered the glaciated nitrogen dessert, but the refrigeration unit on level 4 just blew a gasket. I need to route a cooling protocol through the secondary mains or we are going to have a puddle of radioactive soup in 10 minutes. The AI blinked. I have no record of a glaciated nitrogen dessert on the menu. That is because it is a surprise. Kai threw his hands up. And if it melts, the Chancellor is going to melt me. I need you to confirm the power reroute. Check the auxiliary grid. While the AI was distracted, processing Kai's frantic and completely nonsensical request, Lyris slipped from the shadows behind it. She moved silently, her modified attendant's uniform blending with the dark paneling. She reached the console embedded in the wall behind the android. From her wrist, she deployed a needle-thin data spike, a piece of illicit tech she had apparently concealed in her bracelet. She jammed it into the port. The AI froze mid-sentence. I must consult the glaciated. Kai kept talking, improvising a story about a catering disaster involving zero-gravity shrimp, keeping the AI's logic processors tied up in knots. Behind the droid, Lyris's fingers flew across a holographic interface that projected from her spike. She bypassed the firewalls, slicing through layers of encryption with a speed that made Kai dizzy just watching. Got it, she mouthed. The obsidian doors did not open. That would trigger a physical alarm. Instead, she extracted the data directly. She pulled the spike, and the AI jerked back to life. Protocol requires written authorization. The AI finished, looking suspicious. Never mind, Kai yelled, checking his fake watch. The chef fixed it with a fire extinguisher and some duct tape. We are good. As you were. He turned and bolted around the corner, grabbing Lyris's arm as they sprinted toward a secure alcove further down the hall. Safe in the shadows of a decorative statue. Lyris brought up the stolen files on her bracelet projector. This is it, she said, her voice shaking. The groom's private correspondence. The security schematics for the ceremony. She scrolled through the data, her eyes scanning the alien text faster than Kai could follow. Then she stopped. Here, she pointed. The command key. A schematic rotated in the air. It showed a cufflink, a heavy gold square encrusted with a single, large ruby. It is a transmitter, Lyris explained. Short range, high frequency. It links directly to the crown's receiver. So we just need to get the cufflink, Kai said, pickpocketing the groom. I can do that. I have bumped into richer people than him. Lyris did not answer. She was staring at a second file that had opened automatically next to the schematic. It was a video log. The timestamp was from 3 months ago. It showed Lyris's mother, the Empress, sitting in a high-backed chair. She was speaking to a shadowy figure, human, judging by the silhouette. The girl is headstrong, the Empress said, her voice cold and pragmatic. She has the fire of the ancients. It makes her dangerous to the stability of the realm. The crown will ensure she remains manageable. I am doing this for her own good. A puppet queen is safer than a dead revolutionary. The recording looped. A puppet queen is safer. Lyris made a sound like a wounded animal. She staggered back, clutching the edge of a console to keep from falling. The light in her skin flickered violently, strobing between dull gray and flashes of chaotic violet. My mother. She gasped. She knew. She negotiated it. Kai watched the realization shatter her. The one person she thought was protecting her, the one person she thought was trapped by the same politics, was the architect of her cage. She sold me, Lyris whispered, tears spilling over. She did not just sign a treaty. She sold my mind to keep me quiet. She looked as if she were about to collapse, her knees buckling under the weight of the betrayal. Kai stepped in. He did not offer a soldier's platitude. He did not tell her to stay focused. He reached out and pulled her into a hug. It was tight, desperate, and unyielding. He wrapped his arms around her, pressing her face into his shoulder, shielding her from the glowing evidence of her family's treachery. "I have got you," he said quietly. "I have got you." Lyra stiffened at first, her body rigid with shock. Then she crumbled. She gripped the back of his catering jacket, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. She did not sob, but her whole body shook against him. She pulled back slightly, staring at his neck. The pulse was there, beating steadily. The hunger flared, the desire to numb the pain with the rush of the feed. It would be so easy. Kai saw the look. He did not pull away. Instead, Lyra squeezed her eyes shut. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. The contact was electric. A psychic pulse, stronger than anything they had shared before, exploded between them. It was not a scan. It was a deluge of raw emotion. Kai felt her heart break as if it were his own, a physical tearing in his chest. But then, the vision shifted. For a single heartbeat, the corridor dissolved. Kai saw a throne room made of black bone. He saw Lyra sitting on it. She was wearing the crown. Her eyes were empty, glowing with a flat, dead red light. She raised a hand, and 1,000 ships burned in the sky. And at the foot of the throne, Kai saw himself. He was wearing a black uniform, face masked, holding a rifle. He was standing guard. He was empty too. A soldier who had followed orders until there was nothing left of him. "No," Lyra's voice echoed in his mind. "Not that future." They jerked apart, gasping as if they had just surfaced from deep water. They stared at each other, eyes wide, the horror of the vision hanging between them like smoke. Kai rubbed his forehead, his hand shaking. "Okay," he said, his voice raspy. That was vivid. Lyris leaned against the wall, looking pale but resolute. The grief was still there, but the vision had burned away the shock. It had replaced the sadness with a cold, hard fury. "We cannot let that happen," she said. "No argument here," Kai said. "I do not look good in black uniforms." Lyris let out a weak, shaky laugh. It was a small sound, but it broke the suffocating tension. "Our first date is a bit intense, isn't it?" she joked, her voice trembling. "Conspiracy, betrayal, apocalyptic visions." Kai managed a grin. "I usually stick to dinner and a movie, maybe mini-golf, but I am adaptable." He tapped the side of his head. "I am copying the files to a hidden partition in my implant. It is old military tech, isolated from the network. They cannot wipe it remotely." "Do you have the frequency codes for the cufflink?" Lyris asked, wiping her face and standing up straight. "Got them," Kai said. "And I have the broadcast protocols. If we can get that key, I can use my implant to hijack the palace feed. We can show everyone what is inside that crown. We can play your mother's video on every screen in the sector." Lyris nodded, her jaw set. "Then we have an appointment to keep," she said. She looked at the time on the console. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. The part closed with them crouched in a hidden alcove overlooking the main atrium. A massive holographic projection floated in the air, showing the preparations in the ballroom below. The scene was magnificent and grotesque. Thousands of flowers, millions of credits worth of decorations. On the screen, the groom stood at the altar. He was smiling, looking handsome and vacant. He adjusted his cufflink, the heavy gold square with the ruby. It glittered under the lights. A dignitary raised a glass on the screen. "To peace," the dignitary toasted, "through unity." Kai looked at the screen, then at Lyris. "Ready to crash a party?" he asked. Lyris watched the groom touch the key to her mind. Her eyes were dry now, and dangerous. "I am going to burn it down," she whispered. She turned to Kai. "Let's go." The Sky Palace did not sleep. It merely held its breath, tightening its muscles in anticipation of the violence to come. Above the cloud layer, the station went into full lockdown. Blast doors made of reinforced durasteel slammed shut across the grand promenades, sealing the elite off from the vacuum and the rabble. Security patrols tripled, their armored boots thudding in synchronized rhythm against the polished marble floors, while the AI-controlled surveillance net tightened its grip, scanning every retina, every heartbeat, and every unauthorized energy signature with ruthless efficiency. Kai and Lyris were no longer in the marble halls. They had descended, slipping through the cracks of the station's infrastructure like water finding a leak. They were in the underlevels now, the cramped, sweating gut of the megacity that the guests above pretended did not exist. Here, the air was thick with the smell of frying oil, exotic spices, and unwashed bodies. Neon signs in a dozen alien languages sputtered and buzzed, casting a sickly pink and green light over the narrow tunnels. This was where the workers lived, the refugees, the smugglers, the cleaners, and the mechanics who kept the floating paradise aloft. It was overcrowded and loud, a cacophony of commerce and survival that drowned out the proximity alarms echoing from the upper decks. Kai pulled the collar of his stolen catering jacket up, trying to hide his face. Lyris, still wearing her modified attendant's uniform, walked close to him, her eyes darting nervously at the press of bodies. "It is so loud," she whispered, flinching as a hover cart laden with scrap metal rattled past them. "It is alive," Kai corrected, scanning the crowd for threats. "Up there, it is just a simulation of life. Down here, people are actually living it. Keep your head down. We are looking for a shop with a blue holographic eye above the door. They found it tucked between a noodle stall and a murky establishment selling illegal atmospheric filters. The sign was a glitching projection of a three-eyed skull." Kai pushed the bead curtain aside and ushered Lyris in. The shop was a cave of technological wonders and horrors. Cybernetic limbs hung from the ceiling like cured meats. Data stacks hummed in the corners, and the counter was piled high with stripped circuit boards. Behind the counter sat Mog. He was a Batarian hybrid, squat and wide, with 3 vertical eyes that blinked independently. He was soldering a neural interface with a laser torch held in his teeth. "We are closed," Mog mumbled around the torch. "Unless you are here to pay off the debt for that reflex booster I sold you last year, which, judging by the cheap jacket, you are not." "I need an upgrade, Mog," Kai said, stepping into the light. "And I need it fast." Mog spat the torch onto a metal tray and looked up. All 3 eyes widened as they landed on Lyris. "You brought a friend," Mog said, a grin splitting his bearded face. "And she is glowing. You know, glowing is usually bad for stealth." "Kai." "She is with me," Kai said shortly. "I need a stealth hacking module, military grade, compatible with a Generation 4 sniper implant." Mog whistled. "That is vintage hardware, kid. Generation 4, that belongs in a museum. Trying to patch a modern stealth mod onto that rust bucket is like trying to teach a cat to fly a starship. It is messy." "Can you do it?" Lyris asked, her voice cutting through the banter. Mog looked at her, really looked at her, and his grin faded. He sensed the authority, even beneath the disguise. "I can do it," he said, serious now. "But it will cost you, not credits. I want a favor, a big one, to be named later. And I want exclusive rights to advertise that I upgraded the courier who, whatever it is you two are about to do." "Deal," Kai said immediately. "Sit," Mog commanded, pointing to a dentist's chair stained with oil. The procedure was fast and brutal. Mog connected a thick cable to the port behind Kai's ear. Lyris watched, her hands twisting together, as Kai gritted his teeth against the invasive sensation of code being rewritten directly into his brainstem. "Done," Mog announced, pulling the cable free with a wet pop. "Now, let us test the motor override. I patched the hacking suite into your autonomic nervous system. It lets you type code at the speed of thought, but sometimes the wires get crossed." "What do you mean, crossed?" Kai asked, rubbing his neck. Mog tapped a command on his datapad. Kai's left leg suddenly kicked out, performing a perfect high step. "Hey!" Kai yelled, grabbing the armrest. "Diagnostic routine." Mog chuckled, checking the servos. He tapped another key. Kai stood up abruptly, his arms snapping into a rigid, angular pose. Then, to his horror, his body began to move. He performed a sharp, rhythmic hip swivel, followed by a dramatic arm wave that looked suspiciously like a pre-programmed victory dance from a popular arcade game. "Stop it!" Kai shouted, struggling to regain control of his own limbs as his body executed a flawless pirouette. "I am a decorated veteran. This is undignified." Lyris, who had been watching with wide, fearful eyes, suddenly let out a sound that was entirely unprincess-like. She laughed. It started as a snort and blossomed into a genuine, bell-clear laugh that seemed to light up the dingy shop. "You have excellent rhythm," she managed to gasp, watching Kai forcefully moonwalk across the dirty floor against his will. Mog cackled, tapping a final key. Kai froze, then collapsed back into the chair, panting. "System calibrated," Mog declared, wiping a tear from his middle eye. "You are good to go, Twinkle Toes. The stealth module will let you ghost past anything short of a level 10 AI. Kai glared at the alien, then at Lyris, who was still smiling, the tension in her shoulders significantly lower. "We are leaving," Kai grumbled, standing up and checking his dignity at the door. "Put it on my tab." They slipped back into the tunnels, moving faster now. But the brief moment of levity had a cost. The delay had allowed the security net to catch up. As they turned a corner into a deserted maintenance sector, the air suddenly ionized. "Movement!" Kai shouted, shoving Lyris behind a heavy support pillar. 2 security drones dropped from the ceiling vents. These were not the polite concierge bots from the upper levels. These were enforcer units, sleek black wasps armed with plasma casters. "Halt!" The lead drone screeched, biological signatures unverified. Kai did not wait for them to ask for ID. He activated his new module, his vision flooded with cascading green code. He reached out with his mind, grabbing the lead drone's targeting protocol and twisting it. The drone spasmed, spinning in the air, but the second drone was faster. It leveled its cannon at Lyris, who was trying to scramble through a hatch. "No!" Kai roared. He broke cover, sprinting across the open corridor to draw the fire. He moved with the enhanced speed of his old military reflexes, but he was half a second too slow. The plasma bolt caught him in the left shoulder. It did not pierce the armor weave of the jacket fully, but the heat transfer was instant. Kai shouted, a raw sound of pain, as the impact spun him around and slammed him into the wall. He did not stop. He rolled, coming up on one knee, and threw a jammer spike, one he had swiped from Mog's counter, at the second drone. The spike hit the drone's optical sensor, detonating a localized EMP. The machine dropped like a stone. "Kai!" Lyris screamed, running to him. "Go!" Kai gasped, clutching his shoulder. "More will come." They scrambled through the hatch, sealing it behind them, and collapsed into a dim maintenance alcove. It was a small, dusty space used for storing cleaning solvents, illuminated only by a single, flickering emergency strip. Kai slid down the wall, his breath coming in ragged hitches. The smell of burned synthetic fabric and seared flesh filled the small space. "Let me see," Lyris demanded, her hands hovering over him. She was terrified. It is just a graze. Kai lied through gritted teeth. He pulled his hand away. The jacket was melted to his skin, and blood, bright, red, human blood, was sluggishly oozing from the wound. The scent hit Lyris like a physical blow. In the shop, she had laughed. In the tunnel, she had been brave. But here, in the dark, with the smell of fresh blood filling her senses, the biology she hated roared to the surface. Her pupils blew wide, eclipsing the violet iris until her eyes were black pools of hunger. Her fangs descended, aching with a need that went deeper than starvation. She scrambled back, pressing herself into the opposite corner of the alcove. "Stay back," she warned, her voice distorted by the change in her jaw structure. "I cannot." Kai, the smell. Kai looked at her. He saw the monster she was afraid of. He saw the predator that could tear him apart in seconds. But he also saw Lyris. He saw the girl who wanted to be free. He saw the woman who had laughed at his dancing. He was lightheaded. The pain in his shoulder was a throbbing drumbeat. He knew he was losing blood, and with the adrenaline crash, he was getting weaker. He needed to stabilize, but he also needed her to be focused. If she was fighting the hunger, she could not help him hack the ceremony. "Lyris," Kai said softly. "Do not speak to me," she gasped, turning her head away, her body trembling violently. "I am losing it. I am going to hurt you." "No, you are not," Kai said. He winced as he shifted, pulling the collar of his jacket down to expose the uninjured side of his neck. "Come here," he said. Lyris froze. She looked back at him, her eyes wide with shock and longing. "What?" "You need it," Kai said. "I am bleeding anyway. It is a waste, and I need you strong. I need you clear-headed for the hack." "No," Lyris whispered, horror warring with desire. "It is a violation. It is what the crown does. It takes." "I am not the crown," Kai said firmly. "And you are not taking. I am giving." He looked her in the eye, his gaze steady despite the pain. "I trust you, Lyris. I trust you not to take too much." The words hung in the air, heavier than the humidity. Trust. It was a currency more valuable than credits in the underlevels. Lyris moved. She crawled toward him, her movements fluid and predatory, yet hesitant. She stopped inches from him. She could hear the blood rushing in his carotid artery. It sang to her. "Are you sure?" she breathed, her lips brushing the skin of his throat. Kai shivered, not from cold. The proximity was electric. "Do it." Lyris closed her eyes and struck. It was not like the movies. It was not a savage tear. It was a sharp, clinical puncture, followed immediately by a rush of endorphins that Kai's brain released to mask the trauma. Then, the world dissolved. As Lyris drank, the blood bond tore open. It was not just fluid transferring between them, it was consciousness. Kai gasped, his head falling back against the wall. He was no longer in the alcove. He was in a nursery made of crystal. He was a child, small and violet-skinned, sitting alone in a room that was too big, waiting for a mother who never came. He felt the crushing weight of loneliness. He felt the cold, clinical touch of scientists measuring his growth. He felt the shame of being told his hunger was a defect, something to be hidden. He felt her disgust at herself. "I am a monster. I am a weapon. I am unlovable." Kai pushed back against the flow. He sent his own thoughts down the line. "You are not a monster. You are a survivor. You are the only person in this palace worth a damn." He felt her shock at his presence in her mind, and then her gratitude. It washed over him like warm water. Lyris pulled away. She gasped, stumbling back, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes were wet with tears, her fangs stained crimson. She looked at him with a mixture of awe and devastation. Kai slumped slightly, feeling weaker, but his mind was crystal clear. The bond hummed between them now, a permanent, two-way frequency. He could feel her heartbeat in his own chest. "I am sorry," she sobbed, curling into herself. "I am so sorry, and I crossed the line." Kai reached out, his hand shaking, and found hers. He pulled her gently until she was sitting next to him, shoulder to shoulder. "Hey," he whispered. "Look at me." Lyra shook her head, ashamed. "Look at me," Kai commanded gently. She looked. Her eyes were violet again. The red faded, but they were filled with pain. "You did not take anything I did not give," Kai said. "That is the difference. That is what your mother does not understand. That is what the crown does not understand." Lyris wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "You saw. Inside. You saw how weak I am." "I saw a little girl who was lonely," Kai said. "And I saw a woman who is trying to save the galaxy. That is not weak, Lyris. That is the strongest thing I have ever seen." He leaned his head back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. "You know," he murmured, "for years, ever since I left the service, I felt like I was just drift debris, floating through space, delivering packages that didn't matter to people who didn't care." He squeezed her hand. "Tonight, for the first time, I feel like I am being used for something real, something that might actually save people. If my blood helps you tear this place down, then it is the best delivery I have ever made." Lyris looked at him, her heart swelling with an emotion she could not name. It was bigger than gratitude. It was bigger than the bond. She leaned her head on his uninjured shoulder, careful not to jostle the wound. They sat there in the silence, two fugitives in a dirty closet, holding hands. "It is about choice," Lyris said softly, staring at the dust motes dancing in the flickering light. "Power is not evil. Hunger is not evil. It is taking without asking that is evil. It is the crown. It is the treaties. Consent." Kai agreed. It is a small word, but it holds up the sky. They stayed like that for a long time, letting the bond settle, letting the strength return to their limbs. They whispered fears they had never told anyone else. Kai talked about the nightmares of Oakhaven. Lyris talked about the fear that she would eventually become her mother, cold and pragmatic. "You won't," Kai said, "because you have something she doesn't." "What?" "You have a courier with a stealth mod and a bad attitude." Kai grinned weakly. Lyris smiled, squeezing his hand. "And you have a vampire princess who knows all the escape routes." Renewed by the moment, the air in the alcove shifted from confessional to tactical. "Okay," Kai said, sitting up straighter and checking his chronometer. "We have 2 hours. We need a plan that is better than run and scream." "We need to be in the ballroom," Lyris said. "The crown ceremony happens at the very end. The groom activates the key when I kneel." "I cannot just walk in there," Kai said. "Security will be scanning for guests." "No," Lyris said, her mind racing. "But they will not be scanning the entertainment. The holographic dance troupe. They wear full-body suits and sensor masks. They are moving in and out of the secure zone constantly." Kai groaned. "Please tell me I do not have to dance again." "You do not have to be good," Lyris said, a smirk touching her lips. "You just have to be there. I will slip into the preparation chamber. I will play the part. I will put on the veil. I will walk down the aisle. And when the groom moves for the key," Kai asked. "I will give the signal," Lyris said. "You use that new mod of yours to hijack the broadcast. We override the AR projectors. We show them the files. We show them my mother's tape. We turned the wedding of the century into a crime scene investigation. Kai nodded. I like it. But we need to plant the virus first, Lyris said. To hijack the projectors, we need access to the entertainment subnetwork. There is a conduit junction 2 levels up, Kai said. Pulling up the schematics Mog had uploaded, we can splice it in there. They moved out, leaving the sanctuary of the alcove behind. They climbed through the rusting guts of the station, moving with silent precision. As they reached the junction point near the upper service lifts, they stopped. Below them, through a grate in the floor, they looked down into a wide loading bay. It was filled with people. Hundreds of the alien workers from the underlevels were being herded onto a cargo transport. Security droids with stun batons were shoving them forward. Families were being separated. Children were crying. Move it, a guard shouted. By order of the Chancellor, security risk assessment. All non-essential biologicals are to be relocated to the mining colonies. Kai watched, his jaw tightening. They are deporting them, he whispered, getting rid of witnesses or just clearing the board. Lyris stared down at the scene. She saw Ilara, the girl with the tray from the break room, being pushed toward the ramp. Ilara looked terrified, clutching a small bag of belongings. They are doing this because of the wedding, Lyris said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet register. To make it safe for the guests, to ensure unity. She gripped the grating until the metal groaned. Look at them. Kai, they are being thrown away like trash. Kai placed a hand on her arm. We stop it, Lyris. We stop all of it. Lyris looked up. Her eyes were dry, steel-edged and burning with a cold fire. If I survive this, she vowed, not to Kai, but to the universe itself. I am going to tear it down, all of it. The assembly, the council, the systems that decide who matters and who doesn't. I will burn their thrones to ash. She looked at Kai. Let's plant that virus. They worked quickly, splicing Kai's implant into the junction box. The stealth mod hummed, sliding the virus code into the palace's mainframe like a poison needle. It is done, Kai said, pulling back. The trigger is set. They split up at the service lift. It was a dangerous moment, leaving each other's side. Be careful, Kai said, touching her arm. You too, Lyris said. Do not trip over your own feet on the dance floor. I will dazzle them, Kai promised. The part ended in silence. Lyris stood alone in her private preparation chamber. The walls were mirrored, reflecting 1,000 versions of her. She looked tired, pale, but her eyes were burning. Attendants fluttered around her, adjusting the final layers of the wedding silk. They lowered the official veil over her face, a shimmer of diamond dust mesh that obscured her features, turning her into a symbol, a faceless bride. She looked at her reflection. She did not see a victim anymore. She saw a saboteur, deep in the staging area for the entertainers. Kai slipped a sleek, mirrored mask over his face. He adjusted the tightness of the dancer's bodysuit, wincing as it pressed against his bandaged shoulder. He stood among the troupe of professional performers, anonymous and deadly. He closed his eyes. He reached out with his mind. Are you there? He thought. I am here, came the answer, clear and strong in his head. He could feel her heart beating. It was slow, steady, and completely in sync with his own. Thump, 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 thump. The music started. Let's dance, Kai thought. Let's dance, Lyris answered. The transformation of the crystalline ballroom was absolute. In the hours leading up to the ceremony, the palace engineers had dissolved the floor entirely, replacing the solid matter with a suspension field of gravimetric force. The space was no longer a room. It was a floating cathedral of light. suspended in the void of the upper atmosphere. Guests did not stand. They levitated. Hundreds of independent gravity platforms, gilded in gold and lined with velvet, drifted in concentric circles around a central dais. The air was thick with augmented reality petals, millions of them, falling in a slow, endless cascade of white and silver. They dissolved upon contact with skin, leaving behind a faint, sweet scent of stellar orchids. The music was a living thing. It was not merely played, it was woven. A live orchestra of 300 musicians sat on a suspended balcony, their instruments blending with AI-composed frequencies that resonated directly in the bones of the audience. The sound was designed to induce awe, a psychoacoustic pressure that forced the heart to beat in time with the imperial anthem. Kai stood among the dancers on the lower tier of the spectacle. He wore a bodysuit of shifting mirrors, a second skin that reflected the chaos of light around him. His face was hidden behind a sensor mask that projected a stylized, anonymous visage, a blank silver slate that betrayed no emotion. Inside the helmet, however, his world was a stream of tactical data, heart rate, elevated, security grid, active, threat level, severe. He flexed his fingers inside the sleek gloves, his shoulder burned by the plasma bolt only hours ago, throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache. But the pain was distant. The adrenaline, combined with the low-level hum of the stealth module Mog had installed, kept him sharp. "Are you ready?" Kai projected the thought, sending it down the invisible silver thread of the blood bond. The answer came back instantly, a sensation of cold steel wrapped in velvet. "I am ready. Do not miss." At the far end of the floating cathedral, the massive blast doors parted. A collective hush fell over the thousands of dignitaries, warlords, and corporate kings. Lyris entered. She was a vision of terrifying beauty. The attendants had dressed her in a gown of pure white light, a fabric so bright it hurt to look at directly. A veil of diamond dust mesh covered her face, obscuring her features, turning her into a symbol rather than a woman. She walked on the air itself, small gravity emitters in her shoes allowing her to tread the empty space toward the central dais. Behind her, floating on a velvet cushion carried by a drone, was the crown of compliance. It looked innocuous from a distance, a simple circlet of silver filigree. But Kai knew what lay inside. He knew the needles were twitching, hungry for the neural pathways of a royal host. Waiting for her on the dais was the groom. The Chancellor's son looked dashing in his dress uniform, his chest heavy with medals he had never earned. He smiled, the vacuous, confident smile of a man who believes he owns the future. On his left wrist, glittering under the harsh lights, was the cufflink, a heavy square of gold encrusted with a single massive ruby, the key to Lyris's mind. Kai counted the beats of the music. 1, 2, 3, turn. 1, 2, 3, lift. The dance troupe began their routine. It was an intricate, swirling display meant to represent the harmony of the spheres. Kai moved with them, his body executing the steps with the precision of a drill, even as his mind calculated vectors and intercept angles. He was not a dancer, but he was a soldier, and a choreographed dance was just a patrol route with better lighting. Lyris reached the dais. She knelt before the officiant, a towering alien figure in robes of crimson. The music swelled to a crescendo, then dropped to a reverent whisper. The vows began. They were ancient words and spoken in a language that predated human spaceflight. Lyris answered on cue, her voice steady and clear, amplified by the room's acoustics. "I submit," she said, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. "I bind my blood to this union. I offer my will to the stability of the realm. Through the bond." Kai felt a spike of nausea from her. It was a physical revulsion at the words. Hold steady, he thought. Wait for the turn. The officiant raised his hands. The time has come for the joining of hands. Let the groom accept the bride's pledge. This was the moment. The groom stepped forward. He reached out his left hand, the hand with the cufflink, to take Lyris's right. The music shifted, picking up tempo for the celebratory spiral. The dancers were signaled to encircle the dais, a ring of shimmering mirrors meant to symbolize the stars witnessing the union. Kai broke formation. It was subtle at first, a slight drift in his trajectory. To the untrained eye, it looked like a flourish. He spun, accelerating as he approached the edge of the dais. He counted the seconds. 3, 2, 1. As the groom reached for Lyris, Kai executed a pirouette that carried him too far inside the perimeter. He feigned a loss of balance, his boot clipping the edge of a gravity projector. He flailed, his arms windmilling in a caricature of panic. "Watch out!" Kai shouted, his voice modulated by the mask to sound like a terrified performer. He slammed into the groom. It was a collision of calculated force. Kai hit the Chancellor's son squarely in the chest, sending the man stumbling backward. The groom flailed, trying to stay upright in the low gravity. "Get off me!" the groom shouted, his face flushing red with indignation. In the confusion, amidst the tangle of limbs and the gasp of the crowd, Kai's hand moved. It was not the clumsy grasp of a falling dancer. It was the lightning-fast strike of a pickpocket. His fingers closed around the gold cufflink. With a twist of his wrist and a precise application of pressure on the locking mechanism, which Lyris had detailed in the schematics, he popped the jewelry free. Kai tumbled to the floor of the dais, rolling away in a heap of apologetic gestures. "I am so sorry, Your Excellency," Kai babbled, scrambling to his knees and bowing profusely. "The gravity field. My boot slipped. 1,000 apologies." The groom straightened his jacket, glaring at the clumsy dancer. He did not notice the missing cufflink. He was too busy looking at the guests, who were laughing. The tension in the room had broken. The warlords and diplomats were chuckling at the unscripted slapstick, amused to see the pristine ceremony marred by a clumsy servant. "Get back in line, you idiot," the groom hissed, shoving Kai away with his foot. Kai scrambled back, retreating into the circle of dancers. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He closed his fist. The metal square was warm against his palm. He slipped his hand under the edge of his sensor mask, pressing the cufflink against the side of his neck, directly over his implant port. "Interface detected." Mog's voice whispered in his ear. A pre-recorded ghost. Key authenticated. Virus payload ready. Kai looked up. Lyris was still kneeling, her head bowed. She had not moved during the collision, playing the statue. "I have it," Kai thought. "It is done." Lyris lifted her head, through the veil, her eyes locked onto the groom's face. The officiant cleared his throat, annoyed by the interruption. "Let us proceed. The placing of the crown." The drone carrying the crown floated forward. The silver tendrils seemed to vibrate, sensing the proximity of the host. Lyris stood up. "Wait," she said. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the silence like a knife. The officiant paused. "My lady?" The groom frowned. "Lyris, what are you doing? Kneel down." Lyris took a step toward him. She placed a hand on his chest, right over the spot where Kai had hit him. "I am nervous, my love," she said, pitching her voice to carry to the microphones. "My heart is racing. The ancient customs allow for a request, do they not?" The groom blinked, caught off guard. "Well, yes, but—" "One last dance," Lyris said, smiling beneath the veil. "A dance to calm a bride's heart before she accepts her duty. Just you and me." The crowd murmured. It was romantic. It was charming. The Chancellor, watching from his high platform, nodded his approval. A final dance would play well on the news feeds. The groom sighed, forcing a smile. Very well. One dance. He gestured to the orchestra. Lyris turned to the musicians. She raised her hand, her silhouette stark against the blinding lights of the cathedral. Play the Nocturne of Truth, she commanded. The conductor hesitated. That was not on the playlist. But a royal command was a royal command. He raised his baton, and the orchestra shifted into a haunting, minor key melody. Lyris turned back to the groom. She did not take his hand. She stepped back, creating a space between them. She looked out at the audience, at the thousands of floating platforms, at the cameras broadcasting to 1 trillion screens across the galaxy. She reached up and grabbed the edge of her diamond dust veil. With a violent, tearing motion, she ripped it from her head. The crowd gasped. It was a breach of protocol, a desecration. Lyris threw the veil to the floor. Her face was exposed, her violet eyes burning with a fierce, terrifying light. Her skin glowed, the bioluminescence flaring bright enough to cast shadows on the dais. She looked directly into the nearest camera drone. I was dropping off a package at a wedding, she said, her voice echoing through the massive hall. The groom looked confused. What? Lyris, what are you saying? Lyris looked at Kai, who was standing perfectly still among the dancers. Dance with me, she cried out, her voice rising to a shout. Dance with me, all of you, and see the truth. Now, Kai screamed in his mind. He triggered the implant, the cufflink key, slotted into his neural port, acted as the master authentication. The virus that Mog and Kai had planted in the entertainment subnetwork surged forward, bypassing the firewalls that were designed to stop external attacks but not authorized commands from the groom's own key. The floating cathedral of light glitched. For a second, the world turned into static. The AR pedals froze in midair, turning into jagged blocks of digital noise. The music warped, screeching into a discordant wail. Then, the system rebooted, but the romantic illusions were gone. Every holographic projector in the room, every floating screen, every newsfeed broadcast abruptly changed. Giant, 50-foot-high projections appeared in the air above the guests. They were not images of flowers or stars. They were documents. They were the encrypted files from the groom's private server. Detailed schematics of the crown of compliance rotated in the air, with red text highlighting the phrases neural override, total subjugation, puppet state. Next to the schematics, the video log played. The Empress's face, 50 feet tall, looked down at the horrified crowd. The girl is headstrong. The crown will ensure she remains manageable. A puppet queen is safer than a dead revolutionary. The audio boomed through the hall, drowning out the confused murmurs. She has the fire of the ancients. I am doing this for her own good. Then came the audio logs of the groom and his father, the Chancellor. Once the bitch is crowned, we liquidate the Ethos Council. We use her biology to command the fleet. Total control within 6 months. The humans will be servants. The aliens will be fuel. The ballroom erupted. It was absolute pandemonium. The floating platforms collided as guests scrambled to make sense of what they were seeing. Warlords shouted for their guards. Diplomats screamed denials. The groom stood frozen on the dais, his face pale as milk. He looked at the giant projection of himself discussing genocide, then at Lyris. You, he whispered, you traitorous little... Cut the feed! The Chancellor roared from his platform, his voice cracking with panic. Shut it down! Kill the system! The palace AI tried to obey. Security nodes flashed red. But the virus had seized root access. The AI was fighting itself. Directive conflict. The robotic voice announced over the speakers, calm amidst the chaos. System override in progress. Truth protocol active. Drones that should have been securing the perimeter began to spin wildly. Some froze. Others, their targeting parameters scrambled, turned their weapons toward the ceiling and fired warning shots into the void. Lyra stood in the center of the storm. She looked like a goddess of vengeance. "Look," she shouted, pointing at the screens. "Look at what they bought with your taxes. Look at what they planned for your sons and daughters." She turned to the camera again. "I am Lyris of House Ethos, and I am not a puppet." She gestured to the crown, which was still floating on its cushion, forgotten in the chaos. "I renounce this throne. I renounce the treaties signed in shadow. I will not wear a crown that makes me a slave, and I will not rule a galaxy built on lies." The crowd was listening. The shock was turning into anger. Alien dignitaries were glaring at the human politicians. The fragile alliance was shattering in real time. "Security!" the groom screamed, pulling a disruptor pistol from his ceremonial sash. "Arrest her! Kill her!" He raised the weapon. Kai moved. He did not dance this time. He tackled. He burst from the circle of performers, shedding his mirror mask as he ran. He hit the groom just as the weapon fired. The shot went wild, scorching the floor of the dais. Kai drove his shoulder into the groom's gut, slamming him to the deck. He punched the Chancellor's son in the jaw, a solid, satisfying impact that split the man's lip. "Stay down!" Kai shouted, but he was one man against an army. The groom's personal guard, elite soldiers in heavy power armor who were not linked to the compromised network, swarmed the dais. Kai felt a heavy boot slam into his ribs. He grunted, rolling away, but another guard caught him with a stun baton. The electric shock convulsed his muscles, dropping him to his knees. "Kai!" Lyra screamed, turning toward him. She raised her hand, telekinetic energy gathering in her palm, but she hesitated. There were too many of them. 3 guards grabbed Kai, abbed. They dragged him up, wrenching his arms behind his back until the shoulders popped. They tore the sensor mask from his face, revealing the human courier, sweating and bleeding, with the stolen cufflink still clutched in his hand. "It's him!" the groom shouted, scrambling to his feet and wiping blood from his mouth. "The courier! The terrorist!" He snatched the disruptor pistol from the floor and leveled it at Kai's head. The room fell silent. The chaos swirled around them, but on the dais, time seemed to freeze. The groom looked at Lyris. His eyes were manic, filled with the humiliation of a man who had lost everything in front of the entire universe. "Put it on!" he snarled, pointing at the crown. Lyris froze. "What?" "Put on the crown!" the groom screamed. "Put it on, right now, or I will spread his brains across this stage." He jammed the barrel of the gun against Kai's temple. Kai winced but did not look away from Lyris. "Do not do it," Kai wheezed, blood dripping from his nose. "Lyris, do not let him shoot. The truth is out. We won." "Shut up," the groom shouted, striking Kai across the face with the pistol. He looked at Lyris. "I do not care about the broadcast anymore. I do not care about the alliance. I just want control. You wear that crown, and you call off your dogs. You tell them it was a lie. You tell them you are sick." He thumbed the safety off. The weapon whined, charging for a lethal shot. "I will count to 3, the groom said. 1. Lyris looked at Kai. She looked at the gun. She looked at the crown. The silver needles glinted. If she put it on, she vanished. The Lyris who laughed at bad dancing, the Lyris who wanted to be free, she would be gone, erased, replaced by a docile slave who would smile while they rebuilt their tyranny. 2. The groom said. Kai's eyes were pleading. "No, Please, no. But Lyris could not do it. She could not watch him die. Not after he had given her his blood. Not after he had shown her that she was more than a monster. Stop, she cried out, her voice breaking. Stop. She fell to her knees. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a crushing, hollow despair. I will do it, she whispered. Just let him go. Lyris, no! Kai screamed, struggling against the guards. Do not do this! Lyris did not look at him. She could not. She crawled toward the cushion. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely reach out. She lifted the crown. It was heavy. It felt cold, like a dead thing. She raised it toward her head. Excellent, the groom sneered, keeping the gun trained on Kai. Lyris closed her eyes. She thought of the maintenance shaft. She thought of the stars. She thought of Kai's hand in hers. I am sorry. She sent through the bond. Live for both of us. She lowered the crown onto her brow. The effect was instantaneous. The silver needles sprang to life. They did not just touch her skin, they burrowed. They pierced her temples, seeking the bones, seeking the nerves. Lyris threw her head back, a silent scream of agony contorting her face. Her violet eyes flew open, then rolled back, turning entirely white. The light in her skin flared blindingly bright, then began to strobe, a chaotic Morse code of distress. Kai felt it. He did not just see it, he felt the invasion. He felt the cold metal spikes driving into her mind. He felt her consciousness, her bright, fiery, beautiful self beginning to fracture. It was like watching a star collapse. Lyris! Kai roared, thrashing against the guards with a strength born of pure desperation. But she could not hear him. The crown settled. The light in her eyes faded to a dull, mechanical gray. She slumped forward, her hands falling to her sides. The connection in Kai's mind, the warm, vibrant hum of the bond, began to static. It flickered, faded. And then, there was only silence. The silence that had fallen over the ballroom was the silence of a held breath, a collective pause before the plunge. The groom, his face twisted in a triumphant sneer, watched the silver tendrils of the crown of compliance sink into the flesh of his bride's temples. He expected the blank stare of a doll. He expected the immediate slavish posture of a puppet awaiting strings. He did not expect Lyris to scream. It was not a scream of surrender. It was a sound of fury, raw and terrifying, that shattered the crystal glasses on the floating trays nearby. Lyris staggered, her hands clawing at the air, but she did not fall. The light in her eyes, which had dimmed to a dull gray, suddenly flared. It was blinding, a chaotic supernova of violet and white. But within that chaos there was a structure, a pattern. The groom took a step back, the disruptor pistol wavering in his hand. What is this? Why is she not kneeling? He looked at the cufflink he had thought was the key to his victory. It was gone, across the dais, pinned by 3 guards. Kai lifted his head. Blood ran down into his eyes, but he was smiling, a grim, bloody soldier's smile. You forgot the delivery fee, Kai rasped. Deep within Kai's neural implant, the stolen cufflink key was not just sitting idle. It was screaming data. The subroutine that Mog, the 3-eyed tech dealer, had hidden inside the stealth module had engaged the moment the crown activated. It was a Trojan horse, a piece of dirty, underlevel code designed to do one thing: invert the command hierarchy. Instead of the crown overriding Lyris's mind, the code forced the crown's receiver open. It turned the mental gateway into a 2-way street. Lyris, Kai shouted in his mind, pouring everything he had into the bond. Hold on! I am here! Inside the storm of her own consciousness. Lyris heard him. She was drowning in a sea of artificial commands. Obey. Submit. Silence. But Kai's voice was a lifeline. He did not just send words. He sent anchors. He flooded her mind with memories. The smell of ozone in the maintenance shaft. The ridicule of his bad dancing in the tech shop. The feel of the cold railing on the balcony where she had admitted she was lonely. The taste of the cheap nutrient paste they had shared in the alcove. These were not royal memories. They were human. They were messy, imperfect, and utterly real. They formed a shield against the cold, mathematical perfection of the Crown's programming. Lyris gasped, her back arching as the struggle intensified. The double-layered glow in her eyes stabilized. The violet of her will swallowed the gray of the machine. She looked at the groom. "You wanted into my head?" she whispered, her voice amplified by the psychic resonance of the Crown until it boomed like thunder. "Then take a look." She threw her arms wide. With a wordless cry, Lyris turned the Crown's power outward. She seized the command pathways that were meant to enslave her and reversed the flow. She tore into the minds of the conspirators, the groom, the chancellor, the corrupt generals standing in the VIP circle. She ripped their private thoughts, their recorded comms, and their darkest secrets out of the dark and threw them onto every screen in the palace. The holographic projectors, still glitching from the virus, suddenly snapped into razor-sharp focus. The ballroom was no longer filled with flowers. It was filled with the truth. A 50-foot image of the Chancellor appeared, superimposed over the dais. He was laughing, holding a glass of wine. "The commoners are like algae." The recording played, his voice dripping with contempt. "They exist to be harvested, human or alien. It does not matter. Once we have the Crown, we can purge the slums, reduce the surplus population by 40%. Efficient." The crowd gasped. The alien dignitaries stared in horror. The human elite looked at their leader, faces pale. Then came the groom's thoughts, projected as a jagged, visceral montage, his disgust for the ethos, his plans to vivisect Lyris once her usefulness as a figurehead was over. "She is just livestock in a dress," his thought voice echoed, cold and hateful. Panic gripped the hall. It was absolute and immediate. The illusion of civilized unity shattered. "Lies!" the Chancellor screamed from his platform, though his voice was thin against the booming broadcast. "It is a fabrication. Security, kill her." But the security forces were faltering. Some of the guards, hearing the plans for the purge of their own families in the lower levels, lowered their weapons. They looked at their commanders with dawning rage. Others, loyal to the paycheck or the ideology, doubled down. "Fire!" a captain roared. Chaos erupted. Laser fire streaked across the floating cathedral. On the dais, the strain was tearing Lyris apart. Her body was rigid, vibrating so hard her teeth rattled. The crown was overheating, the silver metal glowing cherry red against her skin. "Lyris!" Kai's voice cut through the noise in her head. "Stop! You are burning out! Let go!" "I have to finish it," she thought back, her mental voice fraying. "I have to make sure they can never use it again." She could feel her neural pathways singing with pain. Her vision was fragmenting, the world dissolving into pixels of agony. She knew she had seconds before her brain boiled. She made a choice. She gathered the last reserves of her strength, the energy of her bloodline, the power of the crown, and the stubborn human grit she had learned from a courier. She looked into the camera drone one last time. "Freedom," she gasped. The word carrying the weight of a final decree is chosen. She did not take the crown off. She crushed it. She poured a massive surge of telekinetic and bioelectric energy directly into the artifact. The crown shrieked, a mechanical electronic death rattle. The metal slagged, melting instantly into a superheated ruin that dripped from her brow like molten tears. The feedback loop shattered the palace's core systems. The gravity generators failed. The world turned upside down. The floor of the cathedral, which had been a suspension field, flickered and vanished. The floating platforms lost their buoyancy. For a heartbeat, there was weightlessness. Then, everything fell, or floated. The artificial gravity spun wildly, creating pockets of zero-G and pockets of crushing weight. Glass fractured in slow motion, turning into glittering clouds of shrapnel. Wine drifted in red spheres. Guests screamed as they tumbled through the air, grasping for railings, for drapery, for each other. Kai felt the guards release him as they were lifted into the air by a gravity anomaly. He kicked off the dais, propelling himself into the void. "Lyris," he shouted. She was falling or floating away from him, limp and unconscious, drifting through a cloud of AR petals that were still flickering in and out of existence. The molten remains of the crown had fallen away, leaving angry red burns on her forehead. Kai swam through the air. He dodged a tumbling banquet table. He kicked off the back of a floating security drone. He moved with the desperate, singular focus of a man who had found the only thing in the universe worth saving. He reached her. He grabbed her waist, pulling her close. The momentum sent them spinning together. A slow, chaotic waltz in the center of the ruining palace. "Lyris?" Kai shook her gently. Her eyes fluttered open. They were dim, the violet pale and washed out. But they were hers. No red glow, no gray machine. "Kai?" she whispered, her voice barely a thread. "I have got you," Kai said, clutching her tight as a piece of the ceiling drifted past them. "I have got you." She looked around at the destruction, the floating debris, the panicked elite, the ruin of the wedding of the century. A faint, weak smile touched her lips. "You are terrible at peaceful deliveries," she murmured, her eyes sliding shut again. Kai laughed, a choked, wet sound. "I am working on it," he promised. Emergency protocols finally kicked in. Backup generators roared to life, and the gravity stabilized, albeit at a lower, safer level. Airlocks sealed the ballroom, preventing the chaos from venting into space. Outside, the void was filling with ships. The broadcast had reached the fleet. Ships from Lyris's mother's empire, loyalists to the old ways, perhaps, or simply shocked by the revelations, were moving into attack positions against the Chancellor's blockade. Independent vessels, stirred by Lyris's message of freedom, were swarming the sector. The conspiracy had not just been exposed, it had been detonated. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Protests flooded the networks of a dozen worlds. The Chancellor was arrested by his own security detail, who had seen their retirement plans liquidated in the broadcast. Lyris's mother, the Empress, faced a mutiny in her own court as the files regarding her betrayal of her daughter circulated through the Ethos clans. But Kai and Lyris saw none of this. They were in a private medbay on a neutral medical frigate that had responded to the distress call. The room was quiet, white, and smelled of antiseptic, a stark contrast to the ozone and blood of the last few hours. Lyris lay in a regeneration tank, the biogel knitting the burns on her forehead and the neural damage in her cortex. She was awake, sitting up, watching the stars streak past the viewport. Kai sat in a chair next to the tank. He had refused to leave. The nurses had tried to kick him out, citing protocol. But one look at the courier's face and the heavy disruptor pistol he had forgotten to check at the door had convinced them to let him stay. He was cleaned up, mostly. His shoulder was bandaged, his face was bruised, but he looked lighter. The weight of the Oakhaven ghost was gone, replaced by a new, terrified hope. "You should go," Lyra said softly, not looking away from the stars. Go where? Kai asked, peeling an orange he had stolen from the cafeteria. Anywhere, she said. The politicians will want a scapegoat. My mother will want... I do not know what she will want, but it will not be safe to be near me. Kai split the orange and offered her a segment. I tried safe. He said, it was boring, and the pay was terrible. Lyris took the fruit, her fingers brushing his. Her psychic presence was faint, a whisper compared to the shout it had been, but he could still feel her. She felt guilty. She felt afraid that she was broken. I cannot go back, she said. I cannot be the princess, not after what I did. I destroyed the symbol of my house. You saved your house, Kai corrected. You saved everyone. Lyris looked at him. I do not want a throne, Kai. I never did. Then do not take it, he said simply. It is not that simple. Make it that simple, Kai insisted. Renounce it. Walk away. Let them form a council. Let them vote. Let them figure out their own mess. Lyris fell silent. She chewed the orange slowly. And what about us, she asked. Kai leaned forward. I have a ship, he said. Well, Mog has a ship, and I think he owes me a favor since I made him famous. It is not a royal cruiser. It smells like engine grease and old socks. But it flies. Where would we go? There is a colony, Kai said. Out on the rim. Oakhaven was destroyed, but there are others. New settlements. Places where nobody cares who your mother is or what rank I held. Places where they just need people who can work. Lyris looked at him. The idea terrified her. She had never been ordinary. She had never been just Lyris. Can I bring my dress? She asked, a small smile playing on her lips. Only if you disable the death lasers or whatever is woven into it, Kai said. 2 days later, Lyris stood before the galaxy one last time. She did not do it from a palace. She did it from the bridge of the medical frigate, wearing a plain gray jumpsuit. She spoke clearly. She formally renounced her claim to the Ethos throne. She called for the formation of a joint species council to oversee the transition of power. She released the entirety of the royal archives to the public. And then, she asked for asylum. She asked to be allowed to leave, to live as a private citizen. It was unprecedented. It was controversial. But the public pressure was immense. The vampire princess who broke her own crown had become an instant folk hero. To imprison her or force her back to the throne would have caused riots. The request was granted. They left quietly. There was no fanfare, no honor guard, just a battered transport docking with the frigate. Kai carried his own bag. Lyris carried a small case with the few things she owned that were not state property. They boarded the ship. The airlock cycled, and for the first time in her life, Lyris breathed air that did not belong to the Empire. 6 months later, the sky on the colony world of Ferris Prime was a deep, dusty orange. It was not a paradise. The terraforming was still in phase 2, meaning the air was thin and the wind was constant. The soil was gritty. The work was hard, but the stars were real. It was a warm evening, and the settlement was gathered in the town square, a patch of flattened earth between the hydroponic silos. String lights, strung up on poles, cast a warm yellow glow over the crowd. It was a wedding. 2 local farmers, a human woman and an alien mechanic, were getting married. There were no floating platforms, no AR pedals, no AI orchestra, just a fiddler standing on a crate and a drum circle keeping a steady, joyous beat. The food was simple, roasted root vegetables and synth beer. The laughter was loud and unfiltered. Kai stood at the edge of the light, leaning against a support beam. He wore a heavy canvas jacket and work boots. His hands were calloused from repairing moisture evaporators. He looked tired, but the lines around his eyes had softened. The haunting look was gone. He watched the couple dancing in the dirt. They were clumsy, stepping on each other's toes, laughing. It was beautiful. He felt a presence beside him. He did not need to look to know who it was. The bond, though quiet now, was always there, a hum in the back of his mind, a sense of home. Lyra stepped into the light. She was wearing a simple dress made of local fabric, dyed a soft blue. Her hair was loose, blowing in the wind. Her skin still held its faint bioluminescence, marking her as ethos. But the blinding glare of the royal aura was gone. On her forehead, just below the hairline, were faint, silvery scars, the marks of the crown. She did not hide them. They were part of the story. She held 2 cups of punch. She handed one to Kai. "You are lurking," she said. "I am observing," Kai corrected, taking the cup. "It is a security habit. You are not security anymore." "Kai, you are a moisture farmer, and a terrible one at that. You flooded the south field yesterday, and that was a calibration error," Kai defended, smiling. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the wedding. "It is nice," Laris said softly. "No politics, just them." "Yeah," Kai said. "It is real." Lyris turned to him. She set her cup down on a barrel. The music changed to a slow, sweeping tune. The fiddler was out of tune, but he played with heart. Lyris looked at Kai. Her violet eyes were soft, reflecting the string lights. There were no cameras here, no diplomats, no destiny waiting to crush them. Just the wind and the dust and the man who had caught her when she fell. She extended her hand. It was the same gesture she had made in the glittering ballroom, a lifetime ago. But the context had changed the universe. "Dance with me," she said. It was not a command. It was not a plea for survival. It was an invitation. Kai looked at her hand. He looked at the scars on her forehead and the smile on her lips. He thought about the package, the courier bike, the sniper rifle, the crown. He thought about how long he had spent running away from things. He set his cup down. He took her hand. "I am still a bad dancer," he warned. "I know." Lyris laughed, pulling him toward the open space of the dirt floor. "I am counting on it." They moved into the crowd. Kai stumbled slightly and Lyris caught him, her strength easily steadying him. He pulled her close, his arm around her waist. She rested her head on his shoulder. They swayed under the open, unfiltered stars. They were 2 flawed people, carrying scars and secrets, far from the palaces of their past. They were no longer a weapon and a soldier. They were just Kai and Lyris. And as they turned in the slow, imperfect rhythm of the frontier waltz, they stepped into a future that was entirely, wonderfully, their own. Hand in hand,